I worked in a manufacturing facility and you would heat treat steel, so you heat it to a certain degree to harden it.
But if you
But
heat
if
it
you heat
too
it too
much,
much, it becomes brittle. So knowing where that line is really, really, really critical. And I mean, when you're talking about steel,
yeah.
it's literally 1 degree too much is the difference in having a hardened steel or something that crumbles on you.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the mats and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges. I'm Amber Hoover. I'd rather stick to the plan.
And I'm Ryan Hoover, and the first plan A is the easiest plan A.
I wholly agree. It would have been nice if we could have just stuck with our first plan A today.
It's just not how it works.
Again, we're on to third or fourth at this point. So today we are moving on to our second plan A, or third or fourth. Okay, on this episode, we're pulling on a thread that might unravel a popular martial arts, specifically Jiu-Jitsu cliché. It sounds inspiring, but is it actually true, or just another feel-good soundbite wrapped in a gi? Are you ready to anger more of the BJJ community?
It's why I get up in the morning.
I figured. Okay, so I feel like this quote has been making its rounds on social media lately. I'm not sure what caused the resurgence, but I've been seeing it a lot, and so it's been a source of inspiration for this episode, I guess. And maybe you've seen it as well. The hardest belt to earn is the white belt. Have you seen that lately?
Nah, but I don't really like. Oddly enough, I follow almost nothing that has to do anything with what we do.
I didn't know I did until I kept seeing that everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard this plenty of
course,
times.
yeah. And I get the sentiment, obviously. But like, if we're really honest, there are a lot more battles between white belt and black belt than no belt to white belt, I think. But also this is so personal. Like it's so hard to even relate, equating the mental and emotional struggle that you might go through of quote unquote just starting versus the physical, mental, emotional life challenges of white to black.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like most cliches in existence, but especially in our industry, there's an element of truth.
Yeah.
However, it's also like most in that it's overused, overwrought, misunderstood, misapplied. It's the white belt, like it's one decision, one time.
Yes.
Like that's it. After that, it's
there's no promise of a future. It's just
no,
thing, one time, you win, you did it.
And like, look, if somebody quits after day one, did they ever really start?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
The odds of the numbers being, well, most people quit after day one, or most people quit after day, I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever blue belt is.
Almost blue belt.
Because that's showing up and making decisions to show up and making decisions to get on the mat and making decisions to take time away regularly and consistently. And, that's, to me, that's way harder than making that choice one time, And again, I get it. I understand the sentiment, but it's like, and probably it's more contextual to the person.
Yeah.
Yeah. But still, like,
yeah.
if you were super daunted about getting in there day one and getting that white belt, well, that's probably not going to change anytime soon. And I would argue that it probably is going to get
worse,
harder over time. Like I don't know. I struggle with cliches just generally.
I was about to say. So I went back and forth on this a lot because I mean the entrance to our gym, we talk about how the hardest part was getting through the front door, but we're not comparing it to living and breathing it for 5 years. We're just saying, we know you're uncomfortable. We know this already was wrought with a lot of battles and struggles, but you did it. You're here. Right. Congratulations. Like this is the step.
Yeah. So now the actual hard part.
Now the real hard part that we didn't talk about before. Yeah. But so if let's look at it from the beginning. Let's give credit where it's due about the saying. Starting is hard. Stepping on the mat, dropping your ego, being vulnerable, not knowing anything. Like there is a huge emotional cost of showing up for the first time. And that's what is trying to be portrayed.
Yeah.
Once you get in the door and you quote unquote just do the thing, you realize a lot of it was built up within your head.
Yeah.
at least in terms of the start.
I think it overstates starting, and it
Yeah.
probably understates the commitment and the grind and the dedication, discipline that it takes to get to the subsequent levels,
Right.
you know? Um,
And that's definitely the risk, the overstating of the value of just showing up, because you can start things over and over. You can be a serial starter and not get anywhere,
yeah.
never
Well,
move
I mean,
forward.
it's the people that say, well, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years. Well, but have you?
Yeah.
Like,
Have you done?
what does that
Yeah.
mean? You know, you started 10 years ago and you've been 6 times because
Uh-huh.
like that's not doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah.
We're saying jiu-jitsu, but it could be whatever. It doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. That's not doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years. You know,
Right.
that's you
Right.
started it 10 years ago and you started it again six
A few times
times
over.
during that time.
Well, starting is fun,
So yeah. Well,
unique,
I mean,
and
that's why this is such a questionable quote because yes, I understand that starting can be daunting and scary or whatever, but think about the excitement of doing anything new,
yeah.
whether it's job, relationship, activity, whatever. It's not the day one that, you know, is going to determine whether this thing is worth it to you or not. It's the day 47 and then
301.
300 and then
Yeah.
500 and then, 1,000 and whatever. Those are, and the days that you're like, God, I don't know that I can do this again, or,
Yeah.
I'm not feeling
Yeah.
this today or whatever it is, there's some level of that on day one, but it's not for the same reasons. It's just it's the anticipation of it, that goes away pretty quickly.
It does. Yeah. So I think one of the risks too here with overstating and over repeating this cliche is that the white belt looks like a trophy. Again, you talked about it one time, one action, and not even necessarily, I mean, you buy the gi, but regardless, this is a single thing. If you walk around, like if a white belt came up to me and was like, I've done the hardest part, I'd be
Yeah.
like,
Well,
absolutely
it's
have
like,
not.
well, the black belt is earned, not given.
Mhm.
Well, the white belt it's just given.
It's given.
You
Yeah.
know, it's you show up, you pay your trial fee, or you join a gym or whatever, and they hand you a gi, and the white belt is free with the gi.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it truly is just given. The black belt, well,
I'm
generally speaking, the black belt is not just given.
One would hope.
Well, it's interesting because you brought this up, and the thing that I have seen on social lately, and I don't know how it ended up on my feed, and I don't even know who this guy is. It's some financial dude. It's a photo of him with some pretty high level jiu-jitsu guys, and he's talking about how he got his black belt in 3.5 years from these guys. And I mean, obviously, he's getting just
Roasted.
blasted.
Jiu-jitsu guys will not let you
Like,
rest.
it's
Yeah.
kind of wild to read through, but anyway.
Yeah. So, and so for us, if we take it out of jiu-jitsu and look at like our kids program in terms of a white belt,
Mhm.
there is an earning level to it. They have to take some classes. I try to push them on their third trial class that's going to lead to their white belt, give them something to work through, give them a small little piece to grow through. But you get that with the understanding this is the beginning of the journey.
Right.
And this quote specifically overvalues emotional, let's call it emotional intelligence, and undervalues the continued physical and emotional and intelligence, regular intelligence, whatever that means, like
Yeah.
all of the work that has to go into it.
Yeah, because I mean, look, after day one, when you get the white belt, the battles are going to be injuries and fatigue and time away from family and things to do with job and financial strain, whatever. I mean, there's a whole lot that goes into
Untold
truly being
elements.
dedicated to something
Yeah.
like this, that just doesn't really manifest itself in day one or day five or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever.
Well, so training through life phases is another huge
Yeah.
part of this. When I started jiu-jitsu, I was 15. Obviously financial burden is there. It's not on me, it's on my parents. Starting for me was easy. I was already in the martial arts world. People around me were training jiu-jitsu. They loved it. I enjoyed being around them. They brought me on. Like there wasn't a huge barrier to entry to me. It was like, cool, this is another thing, let's go. And then, I trained for a few years, I got my blue belt, I went to college, and life really started hitting. But that's a whole different, starting there as a teenager or even as a kid is a whole different element than starting as an adult, is
Yeah.
a different element than starting as somebody with a family already or whatever it might be.
Yeah. This is along the lines of the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Fine. But that first step's pretty easy.
Yep. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
relatively speaking, that first step's pretty easy. Come back to me when you've hit, step 10,000,
Yeah.
like step 100,000. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you can take this to the other side too. Like the black belt is a white belt that never quit. That's pretty common in
Yeah, that is a really
vernacular
common one.
in our space. And it's like, okay, so if we're saying that, then it's just about showing up,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Again, understating the value, maybe even overstating mindset, what we talked about last episode.
Yeah. I mean, if it's truly a black belt is just a white belt that never quit or gave up or whatever, then it's literally just showing up,
Yeah.
And I think that again understates and undervalues the
The
work
work.
that goes into and the dedication and the discipline that goes into achieving these ranks,
The work and the intention and the self being able to truly be honest with yourself about your skills and weaknesses and that sort of thing, because that's you have to have a growth mindset. And so even if you struggled to get in the door and you overcame that social anxiety or whatever it was that you were feeling and got on the mats, that doesn't mean you're going to overcome, that doesn't equate to overcoming the next
no, because there's another
emotional journey.
challenge coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like if you stick with it, there's going to
Yeah.
be a plethora of it's like just a spinning wheel of challenges. I mean that's just how it goes, and there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and there's going to be a lot of days that you don't want to go and you don't want to be there.
Our hamster wheel of doom, is that what it was?
So, yeah.
Yeah. And but in its AKA life, right? That's
Yeah.
just what it is. So I want to relate this back into emotional intelligence. Not, I mean, we're there, but emotional intelligence was coined by two researchers in the 1990s, and it was the ability to perceive, manage, and understand emotions in yourself and others. And then in 1995, the book Emotional Intelligence was popularized by Daniel Goleman, and he expanded emotional intelligence to include self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills, whatever all those mean. But it really took off in the corporate world, seminars and corporate talks and that sort of thing. And one of the really, again, overused, overstated claims in the book that has no backing to it whatsoever is that 80% of your success is based on EQ over IQ, which makes it seem like emotions matter more than intelligence as a blanket statement, but physical skills and the work that is actually a part of it.
Mhm.
Now, I maybe maybe 80%. Here's the thing. There's no research to back this up. This is just a number thrown out there. Quantifying, like, how do you quantify self-awareness?
Yeah.
To actually figure out if that's contributing. And then where's the line between correlation, causation?
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of high achievers, a lot of people who make it through grit and grind and emotional turmoil and end up on top have, high EQs. But chicken or egg, like which came first? Or is it just, it so happens that all of these people with these skills also show them on both sides of the fence, emotions over whatever. Again, intelligence being a broad category as well.
I don't know. I've met a lot of really dumb smart people.
Expand on that, actually.
A lot of really like intelligent people when it comes to numbers or when it comes to um, textbook sort of academia, but have zero ability to deal with any sort of stress, adversity, problem solving, task switching, that kind of thing. And usually that I think is based on some sort of emotional toughness, emotional intelligence. Because textbook kind of academia learning tends to be a lot more linear in approach and being able to memorize tasks or memorize numbers or problem solve based on specific equations. But once you start getting outside of that, or something doesn't go exactly the way that you thought it was going to go, or that you were told it was going to go, or that all of your algorithms said we're going to kind of manifest, and when it doesn't, having the emotional intelligence to be able to switch gears in real time, I think, is the difference between a lot of times kind of high achievers and those that you're like, man, they had so much potential. I can't figure out why they didn't, blah, blah,
Yeah, yeah,
blah,
yeah. Back to potential. So, I mean, I do feel like we pit emotion versus intelligence a ton, but there's plenty of crossover. And then what tends to lack is then you've got the physical quotient,
Mm-hmm.
PQ. And I'm not sure like how deep the rabbit hole, what other quotients are we missing? What other aspects are involved? And at what point is it just too much to look at?
Yeah.
But, physical intelligence is a part of what you're talking about,
Yeah.
right? The coordination. And is that developed as a kid? And as you enter adulthood, you're maxed out, you're capped out? Do you have limits? Like, are these skills that we can learn and develop? I feel like emotion, especially emotional intelligence, a lot of time is written like it is what it is. Like you are set at your ability to manage and regulate emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But if it weren't a skill, then what are we doing with therapy?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a skill side to it that can be developed and learned,
Sure.
just like intelligence, just like physicality and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but just like intelligence, there's upper limits. I mean,
Yeah.
there are people in the world that their intelligence is what it is.
Right.
That's all
Right.
of us, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I am not going to understand physics the way Neil deGrasse Tyson is. Like no matter how much I study, whatever, my brain doesn't work that way. I don't assimilate information in that way. Just like I'm never gonna be 6'8". Like
Yeah.
it,
Can you develop it? Yes, but there are limits in ability, but there's also limits of time.
yeah.
And I think that's not what people like to acknowledge is that okay, yeah, you could maybe be the best free thrower on the planet, but it's going to take you 83 years or whatever
Yeah. But
versus
even
somebody
that
else who
isn't
wouldn't.
going to make you an NBA player.
And yeah, yeah.
I guarantee you there is probably somebody in the world right now that shoots pretty damn close to 100% from free throw line that is not playing in the NBA. So
True.
just having one
One
little
element.
aspect, one little piece of the thing is not the thing, you know.
Well, and that's having that one little white belt is not
Right.
the journey.
It's
And again, it's I stopped short of calling it insulting, but it kind of is to say that white belt is the hardest part.
like it's marketing.
It's more,
Like that's what it is. I mean, at the end
AKA
of the
insulting.
day,
Yeah, yeah,
that's what it is. It's a way for us, the space, the industry, whatever,
yeah.
to encourage, I think, people to get started,
Hmm.
and then the hope is, I think, that by saying it that way, you encourage them to stick around for the next couple of weeks, and then they kind
Yeah.
of love it, and then okay, well, we're gonna go, even though now I figured out that was a lie. That me walking through the door
Just
was
kidding.
not the
The hard,
easiest part of
yeah,
this. But now that I've kind of bought into all of the other things that are supposed to be beneficial to me.
I do think. I mean, you do kind of have to lie to adults to get them to eat their veggies. like,
Oh
like
yeah, I mean, like
it's that's part of human nature.
yeah,
I took a marketing, yeah, I took a marketing 101 class in college, and I know that's probably the only teacher I've ever had that probably didn't like me. I mostly called it manipulation 101. And I'm right. I'm still right. It is still a lot of manipulation tactics, but I understand why they exist and their necessity now
sure,
more as a business owner than I did as a, college student who knew everything
yeah,
walking in the door.
yeah,
I know this isn't where we started, but I didn't actually have a plan for where we would go with this. So I'm gonna keep down this path of these different quotients because we've hit intelligence and emotional and physical, and I want to talk about social quotient. one's ability to interact, communicate with others with empathy and assertiveness, your ability to build a network of friends, maintain that network of friends over time, that sort of thing. And those skills are important entering a martial arts, which is its own ecosystem, its own community. We even, I think, went as far last time to talk about the culture aspect of it that is part of what you're doing when you enter into these groups and changing your identity to a degree.
I would argue that a lot of people that get into martial arts are so sorely lacking in this.
Yeah.
And because of that, they're looking for a place that they can maybe assimilate and fit in. Think about all the weirdos that do martial arts.
There are a lot of weirdos that do martial arts.
Like,
Chief among them, me.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm
No.
saying anything that people aren't aware of. I mean, think about all the weirdos that do what we do.
Yeah.
Um, and there's a high level of social awkwardness when a lot of those folks come in, those folks, me,
Yeah.
all of us
Yeah.
come into the center. It's like I would say that they are sorely lacking in this particular quotient. And I'm
Yeah.
stereotyping, but I mean they exist for a reason. I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot of weirdos.
Yeah. More often than not, somebody is going to come through with a low SQ
Yeah.
if we're looking at it that way.
I will argue that they tend to be high on the IQ side.
Hmm.
Obviously, not all of them, but I do think that there's a correlation there. They tend to be higher on the IQ side, lower on the SQ side, and the EQ and PQ. I think those are all over the place.
Hmm.
You know,
Oh, without a doubt.
because you're going to have people that are coming through our doors that are incredibly athletic, and then you're going to have people come through our doors that they have never played a sport in their lives and always wanted to do something but never felt comfortable doing it, and probably their low SQ kept them from doing a team sport or something like that,
Yep.
something in school, whatever. And this is something that they can do as an individual but still be
Part of a
part of a
team.
team. Yeah.
That was my draw to it. And, I started early enough that I didn't make that conscious choice. But I was in martial arts while going through the kid things of doing soccer and baseball and basketball and all of that kind of stuff. And it's not that I didn't enjoy the team environment. It's just that it felt stressful to me because I wanted to do well for my team. And if I didn't do well, it was this compounded effect of, I hate that I didn't do well, but also I hate that I let down my team. And I found much more at home in martial arts because I had my group to be around, but it was like my ability, my skill set was all on me. And as I was learning and growing, it's still me building me with a community around me to help.
My problem was I was hyper competitive and I didn't understand how to motivate other people on a team to bring them to my level.
Ah,
Not my skill level, my competitive level. And so that probably didn't manifest itself in awesome ways from a team perspective. I
so you probably got frustrated a lot.
Oh yeah.
You were frustrated at me on the team,
I
who am trying to do my
I
best.
highly greatly appreciate effort and intensity
Mm.
and competitiveness. And if I'm not seeing that, I do find it maybe less so now than I did then. Definitely less so now than I did then, but there's still an element of that. It is frustrating.
That's a quotient. I don't know what I mean. So the other one I have here is adversity quotient.
Mhm.
Maybe it comes down to that because it's your ability to overcome challenges
Yeah.
or adversity. And so when faced with troubles and obstacles and competition, I'd argue
Mhm.
the ones with a high adversity quotient are pedal to the metal, let's go. Ones with low shy away, and that's where that team can dissolve down.
Mhm.
You feel like that's changed a good bit over time. What are some things that have I guess benefited you? Did you bring down your expectations? Did you change your ability to yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is what it is,
It
right?
is what it is.
Yeah.
And again, I don't mean this to sound any other way than what it is. I don't think most people are on my level when it comes to, and I'm saying it's an unhealthy thing. So I'm saying that they shouldn't be on my level when it comes to my competitive kind of nature.
Hmm.
You know,
But like anything, it has its pros, and so you
sure,
have to understand where you lean into it and where to back off.
right. And when you're a business owner, when you're running a business, you definitely have to have that. Uh, but
Hmm.
like anything
Hmm.
else, it can be taken to an extreme and it can go too far. And you can alienate people and make it very difficult for people to be able to work with you because you're constantly looking for a level that most people may not even see as attainable, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I've definitely had to manage my own expectations for me and for the people around me. And again, I don't want this to sound like I'm, it is what it is. I believe that I, at least at one time, had a competitiveness that was probably not healthy.
Well, I mean, we balance that out a good bit in each other, because when obstacles arise, I'm not jumping up, let's go. I'm like, let me hate on this for a while.
Yeah.
And you're ready to scorch earth it.
Yep.
And we land somewhere in the middle, I feel like ultimately. Because you're like, do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, I'm gonna start with this one. I think. I don't know. Running a business again was not in my plan. It was not in my plan A. It was not in any of my next plan A's at all. Here we are.
Well, and I mean, I think again, if all these quotients that we're talking about, and some of them being built in, and some of them being developed, this is all I knew. My granddad owned
Hmm.
his own business. My dad owned his own business. So there's probably some level of nurture, some level of nature there. I didn't know anything else really. I quickly found out that I'm not an awesome employee, for a lot of the same reasons I was just talking about. Like,
Yeah.
if I am working for somebody that I feel like is just not pushing the way that
Competitive,
they should
right.
be put, like
Yeah.
that's really hard to deal with. Just like I'm sure that I've had people work for me that were way smarter than me, and they thought, why am I listening to this dumbass? Like
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some level of that. It's hard to work with people when you feel like they're operating on a different plane than you are. Whether that's the emotional, the social, the physical, and I think all of that depends on what the job is, what the context of the team is, whatever. And so, as an owner, you have to, or a leader of any kind, you have to figure out how to work with all types, or you have to accept that there is going to be a level of turnover that is going to constantly be just kind of this churn, until you get the people that are going to match the level that you're trying to get to. And that's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
That like, it's very difficult to have any sort of consistency and build a thing when, you're constantly switching out the people on the bus.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what it takes, because if you try to take that bus down the road without the right people in the right
Oh yeah,
spots,
no,
it's not going anywhere.
no.
Um, but that's where, if you're like, we look at cliches and we talk about just mindset or
Hmm.
grind, or that sort of thing. Well, if you just try to grind that out anyway, you're going to grind yourself down.
Yeah.
You've got to recognize when it's time to push and when it's time to strategize before you push.
I mean, if I'm trying to sharpen a knife edge, I
Hmm.
have to know what's just right and what's too much. Because if I do too much, I'm going to dull it. I'm going to go the other way.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, in a former life, I worked in a manufacturing facility, and you would heat treat steel. So you heat it to a certain degree to harden it.
But if you
But
heat
if
it
you heat
too
it too
much,
much, it becomes brittle.
uh,
So knowing where that line is really, really, really critical. And I mean, when you're talking about steel, I mean,
yeah,
it's literally 1 degree too much is the difference in having a hardened steel or something that crumbles on you, and grinding a knife is the difference between a blade that slices and a blade that is just dull. And people are similar. It's harder to find that line, and everybody's going to be a little bit different. Steel is steel. That's not even true.
yeah.
But certain types of steel or certain types of steel, people, it's a lot harder to find that where that delineation is.
Well, for people, it's because if we relate it back to steel, there's going to be a bigger difference in people, and that kind of comes down to the what you're made of. Boiling water hardens the egg but softens the potato kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What's our starting point?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where this phrase, the hardest belt to earn is white belt, you can't just blank that across everybody, because where are we
Right.
starting?
Right.
White belt was absolutely not the hardest for me.
Right.
That was maybe one of the easiest.
Yeah.
Some people
Oh, it
have
is
no
the
problem.
listen.
Okay, it
At the
is.
end of the
Yeah,
day,
yeah.
we can put all the bullshit aside. It is the easiest to earn because you don't earn it. It is given to you. Yes, I
For
get that
taking an action,
it
for
may
showing
be
up. Yeah,
very difficult for you to make that first step and get it. And we talk about this in coach courses. For a lot of people, that is really, really, really hard to do. I would argue, however, though, if that whole process was really difficult for them, and then they show up in a class, and especially in a jiu-jitsu class where you don't know anything and it's
mm-mm.
completely foreign and you're doing all these weird
Yeah,
moves and you're being put in all these weird positions with people you don't know that outside of this particular setting you would never in a billion years do with a strange person,
yeah.
where all of a sudden, oh, here, I'm going to lay down,
Like,
get on
yeah,
top of me,
just get on
like
top of me. Yeah,
I would argue that if the process of getting onto the mats was very difficult for you,
yeah.
and then you did that class and you just went through all those things that we just talked about, it would be harder to show up the next day than it was the first day. But regardless, if you have if it's a decent training center, they're going to go out of their way to make that first day as easy and
Smooth
smooth,
and yeah,
and they're going to partner you with somebody that they know is not going to, say
yeah.
something out of the way, be reckless, whatever. You've been here for 3 months. Nobody's coddling you anymore,
Nope.
and you're getting hammered. And getting from white to blue is going to be tough, tough, tough for most people. And I think there's no comparison to, again, white belt is one decision, one
One.
action.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
Period.
It's a participation trophy.
Blue belt is thousands of
Decisions.
thousands of actions,
Yeah.
thousands of questions, maybe dozens of injuries,
Yeah.
dozens of doubts.
Well, and there is a compound effect to it. The more times you decide to go, the easier it is to decide to go again. Darren Hardy talks a lot about that as
Let us he know.
a couple things. But the more you make a decision and get a good thing from it, and it reinforces it, or for better or worse, right? If I'm like, oh, I'm just going to stop at Starbucks this one time, and then the next time I drive by it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that was good last time. Let me go again. You do kind of build up your own behaviors and habits,
Yeah.
so you can develop the habit of going,
But I would
but it's a
argue
lot
that
harder.
it's a reset every time you
Injury.
how many, when we promoted people recently, how many people were like, oh my God, I don't want to be a purple belt. Now everybody's
Yeah.
going to try to murder me.
We just talked about that. Yeah. Every time you get a new belt, you're like, no,
Right?
I just got used to the last one.
Yeah, because guess what? Everybody figures out, hey, that white belt was really easy to get.
Yeah.
Now that I got my blue belt or my purple belt or whatever, people are going to try to murder me. When I
Yeah.
was in the white belt, people were not trying to kill me.
Yeah.
Because, listen, the white belt expectation is literally show up,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? That's it. So you can't tell me that that's the hardest thing.
So the expectations. Oh, I'm
Right.
just here to learn versus, well, I have to know some things and I'm supposed to be, I lead and
100%.
yeah.
Like, if you're a white belt, you can look around the room and be like, well, I'm supposed to lose to all these people. I'm supposed to get hammered. I'm
Yeah.
supposed to, I'm just here to learn something and maybe get a little better. Blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, whatever. That is not the case anymore. It is, but it's not.
No.
Whether we put those expectations on ourselves or others do it for us, and then we assimilate to those expectations, there are expectations there. At
Yep.
white belt, it is literally show up, sign the waiver, here's your belt.
Be there. Yeah. 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 No, I agree. And again, the discipline, the resilience, the adaptability to each new belt level, to each new expectation is huge.
Yeah.
And they're again similar emotional battles as walking in the front door for that first time.
Yeah.
You mentioned nature versus nurture, and we've had a lot of our own conversations recently about this and how this sometimes it's looked at like one is more important than the other. Your nature is just how you are, but it is 50-50, and people don't understand the nurture side of it as much. We're babysitting a dog, and he is a massive, wiggly, wobbly goober of a creature. But he is I mean, he is huge. I've not had an animal that large before. And you are not at all concerned about him.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've been going through our own little stuff, working through getting to know him and him getting to know us. And we talk about the differences of my reactions to him versus yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not around creatures this large.
Yeah.
And you've been around much bigger, much more dangerous. And so you understand and respond differently than I do.
Yeah. I mean, for me, there's a difference in being afraid of a thing and having respect for what the thing can do, but then also understanding like the not just the physical dynamics of it, but the behavioral dynamics of it, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You know, people say these things all the time, but I don't think people really understand. Like a dog, for example, can recognize your heart rate change, your blood
Yeah.
pressure change. You know,
Yeah.
they can smell pheromones that are coming off of you. Like they recognize a physiological change in you before you do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I think there's probably some level of nature to this, but it's mostly nurtured. It's mostly, I think, being exposed to this kind of dynamic over and over and over again. I mean, I grew up with Himalayan black bears and bison and zebra, and I had jobs where I was working with rhinos and hippos, and so
I had dachshunds and a couple goldfish.
yeah, that's a little different,
Yeah.
and so when you've been hit, bitten, kicked, butted by all sorts of critters, then a big dog is like, okay, it's not that listen, I have no doubt this dog has the ability. He is built to kill things. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
like that's what he's bred for. Um, and so I have a healthy understanding of that. But I also have a healthy understanding of he needs to know whose house this is.
Hmm.
And the way that, and you can't fake it,
No, we talked about that
like
too. I'm like, well, how do I?
you can't fake your blood pressure. You
Yeah.
can't fake your heart
Yeah.
rate. You can't fake your pheromone. Like those are things that you cannot fake. And so there's an immersion to it that has to happen over time. And I think you have to have been, again, I have no scientific, this is all empirical.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think you have to have been bitten, kicked, butted, you know, um, enough to understand. Well, it's like sparring,
Yeah.
right?
That's what I was just about to compare it
When
to.
we talk about all the time. Look, first time you get hit shouldn't be in a parking lot between two cars when somebody's trying to murder you or kidnap you or whatever. It should happen in sparring, and sparring tends to be scary and daunting for the vast majority of people. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. Um, but over time, you at least get to an understanding of, look, I may not like this, but I'm not terrified in the way that I was when I started. I understand that I can get hit and I'm going to be okay. I understand that I can get kicked and I'm going to be okay, And so I think, a level of that when we start talking about dealing with animals.
Animals. Yeah.
But there's a whole,
And humans. And
yeah, look,
yeah.
understanding body language, you know, body language in dogs, body language in people.
Yeah.
The number of people that I'll see out in public that will approach a dog that I'm watching and I'm like,
He's not good.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like that dog
Oh,
is,
but his tail's wagging.
yeah, but he's not, it's not,
It's stiff. It's not. Yeah. It's a very yeah.
it's moving. It's not whack. Like there's
Yeah.
a difference. That dog is tense. He's stiff, like, and it's people. I'm watching people and no, he's animated. Yeah, he is animated, but he's agitated. Like his arms are splayed. They're outside of his silhouette. He's
Yeah.
looking around. Like there's
Yeah.
all these things that the person, the dog, may not even be aware that they're doing. They're probably not aware that they're doing it, but they know they're uncomfortable. And when those things get ignored, we did a thing with some teenage girls this morning, you know, and one of the things that you kept talking about was making sure that when you go to like a verbal fence, that you're very clear in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Stop, stay right there, back up, back off, whatever it is. There's no ambiguity to it, you know. Um, when you're reading body language, if you don't really understand it, it can be misconstrued in a lot of ways, you know. And so when a dog growls, people are like, "Oh, okay,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
get that." But before that dog growled, he gave you six other cues that he was uncomfortable
Uncomfortable.
with whatever it was you were doing. And we see this in people as well. If you know what you're looking for, if you don't know what you're looking for,
Yeah.
you may get through those six things, and now this person is hitting you
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Because
he,
yeah, you
yeah,
missed. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting again where this nurture comes around because I haven't seen it as much in your youngest, but your oldest daughter is really good at reading people.
yeah,
And a lot of that came from you being really good at reading people. And I'm sure there was some articulation too within that. And so it's something that, again, nature, nurture, we try to work together with. All right. So where have we landed? Is white belt really the hardest to earn?
I would say for some people, maybe.
For those
For
people,
most
they
people,
probably
no.
don't get to their
And
black belt.
well, even if they do, I think at that point they would
They would
say
say, yeah,
the
the
white belt
black,
was not
yeah,
the hardest thing to
yeah.
earn. You know, like
So when are you asking them? Yeah,
right,
yeah,
right. At what part of their journey are we asking? Because no matter what rank you're at, that's probably the hardest one.
yeah, yeah,
You know, at
yeah,
white belt is your hardest rank.
hmm,
At blue belt is your hardest rank. Like
yeah,
so. No matter what rank you're at, that's probably your hardest. If you're doing it right, if you're in a room full of people that are going to push you and challenge you, and your coach is doing the right things. Um, I I get how some people could say, well, I think blue or purple was harder or something like that because at blue and purple there was this level of expectation and people started coming at me hard or whatever. By the time I got to brown, people were still coming at me, but I felt better in my skills, blah blah blah,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. But that only happened because people were coming at you in blue and
Right.
purple. So it's also
And
like,
I'll say too, I think that depends on the room because
yeah,
if you're a brown belt, maybe black belts used to give you a little more leeway, used to kind of at purple or blue. At brown belt, they're probably not doing that nearly as much anymore. They're probably not sleeping on you. They're probably not giving you nearly as much kind of grace as they did prior. And obviously, this all depends. Like
yeah,
if we're
yeah,
talking about a brown belt like Daniel,
yeah,
you
right.
know,
Big, athletic.
right,
Yeah,
good wrestling background, that's a different animal. And again, and we've talked about this before, and I know we're wrapping up, but I think here's my issue with rank in general. No matter what rank it is, it's all arbitrary.
hmm,
It's all based off of what one singular person decided on some given day, you know.
yeah.
And not all brown belts are going to be the same.
No,
Not all blue belts. Not all
no,
whatever
it's
rank it
impossible
is.
because
No.
you have a community, an ecosystem within what you're doing, and that's all you can judge through.
And
Yeah.
I will say, like even this money dude that got his black belt in 3.5 years.
Hmm.
You know what? That doesn't affect me
Me, you,
at
or
all.
your black belt, or
Like
what that
don't
means. Like,
care.
yeah,
And so when people get all bent out of shape about stuff like this, I'm like, why do you give a shit?
yeah.
Like,
It does
oh,
not affect you.
it tarnishes the blood. No, it doesn't.
Not even a little bit.
It only does if you allow it to, but it doesn't. You know,
Yeah.
look, you know what a doctor that got all C's through medical school is?
Still a doctor.
Still a doctor.
Yeah. Yep.
But they're not all the same. They're not all equal.
Nope.
But he's still a
But it's still a
doctor. He
doctor.
still has MD at the end of his name, just like the dude that got all A's all through medical
Hmm.
school. He still just it's not an MDA, it's not an MDC, it's just MD, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So all doctors aren't equal. All black belts and brown belts aren't going to be equal. Listen, we have people in our centers that at purple and brown, I know for sure are going to give me a hell of a time, and at
We have
least
a
a
blue
couple of
belt
them are
running
going to
through
wreck
me
me.
right
You
now. I'm
know,
like, what the heck?
so like,
Yeah.
I don't think that's a reflection of anything other than people are different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if we have this hard and fast rule, like what's the rule?
Hmm.
Okay, this guy got a black belt in 3.5 years. Okay, supposedly he did nothing but privates 5 days a week or something like that with incredibly high level dudes. He didn't compete. Okay, is that going to be the standard? Like, do you have to
Yeah.
compete? Do you have to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a street fight? Like,
Yeah.
what's the standard? Or is it the standard? Well, This dude put in 10,000 hours with, you know, a coral belt, and that coral belt decided he's good to go at black belt, you know. Um, I don't know what he paid. I don't care. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, what if he paid $1,000 an hour? Who cares? Why does that, what difference
Yeah.
does that make?
Yeah. The obsession with standard is so unachievable. Like it's I
I
mean,
mean, unless think about all the people that complain about IBJJF for whatever reason.
yeah.
So unless everybody is going to agree to one organization to standardize everything across the board for jujitsu, as an example, um, I promise you, you're not going to want that. You're not going to like
Well,
that.
look at standardized testing. I don't know anyone who's for that.
Yeah.
When you try to standardize like everyone into one thing, it just doesn't work because that's not how people are. That's not how regions are.
Right.
Diets
Yeah.
are like, oh, you should go paleo. Well, the nature of our bodies and ancestors doesn't lend itself to, okay, there's just one type of diet that everybody in the world should have, no matter how many livers you're supposed to eat or whatever.
I've taught in French Guiana and I've taught in Alaska, and I can promise you, you cannot find the same foods in those places. You know, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
even now, where you can have food shipped in, it's still very difficult, depending on time of years, to get certain types of food in certain types of places.
Yep.
If we go back generations, hundreds of years, you are not Costa Rica, you're not going to find the same kind of animals that you're going to find, or vegetation that you're going to find in Alaska. Finding fresh fruits, vegetables, whatever, very difficult in Alaska. Finding big game, no problem.
Hmm.
Flip that for Costa Rica, flip that for
Yep.
French Guiana, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I think as humans, we like things in nice, clean boxes, and we like spreadsheets, and we like to be able to check things off and whatever, and that's just no matter how much we want it to.
Nope.
So, you know, white belt is probably the hardest thing for you if you're a white belt.
We'll ask you again in a few years.
Yeah, when you're a blue belt.
Hmm. All right. Well, that's our look at barriers to entry. If you enjoyed this discussion, please leave us 5 stars, follow, share, subscribe, engage, comment, share, all of the things. If you didn't enjoy this podcast, overreact, comment on everything, forward it to everyone. Thanks for listening to Second Plan A, and we look forward to growing with you next time.
Thanks, everybody.